I'm Howard Pincus. I'm the president of the Naugatuck Railroad and one of the volunteers at the Railroad Museum of New England. Railroad Museum of New England is here to preserve the old skills, the old techniques, the history of New England railroading, of Northeastern railroading. Trains were running here 20 years before the Transcontinental Railroad opened across the United States in 1869. These are the machines that built America, and we take them when they get discarded, restore them, interpret them, and explain them to the future generations.
Father and son team John and Barney Gramling bring their flagcoal steam engine, Hank, to Thomaston every year to give our visitors a special ride.
My father and I own Flagcoal Company number 75, a 040 tank engine that we bought and restored in 91 to 2001. That's kind of a father-son hobby that's gotten way out of hand, is what it is. The engine was built in 1930. It weighs 82,000 pounds full of coal and water. It was built by the Vulcan Iron Works in Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania, which is just outside of Scranton. It took us 10 years to get it running. We now have 4 of them. At the rate we're going, Dad's 68, and that makes him about 88 by the time we get the last one done. So I think we probably better get him finished. We've had it running all across the country, different spots, giving people rides. And we are here in Thomaston, Connecticut this weekend. We are pulling trains for the Railroad Museum of New England. And this is our 2nd year here, and we've had quite a bit of fun. The engine will hold about 1,200 gallons of water in its tank, carries about a ton of coal. A rule of thumb, 100 gallons of water per mile and roughly 100 pounds of coal per mile. This trip we're doing here, we're going down 3.5 miles and back. We'll go through about 600 gallons of water and probably about 500-600 pounds of coal.
The special thing about the steam locomotive, it's a machine that depends on people. It has to be carefully managed, it takes hours to get it ready for the run, and it takes a lot of tending during its operation. It's the iron horse, as we all learned as kids, and it's a living, breathing machine. If you hear it behind me, it's panting, it's ready to go.
Scenic excursions operate several days a week between May and October. They feature a 75-minute trip between Waterbury and Thomaston, including a run across Thomaston Dam. Aboard our trains are real conductors and engineers in authentic period uniforms, accompanied by volunteers who narrate the trip and answer questions along the way. Passengers can even open the wooden windows of our coaches to enjoy the majestic scenery and hear the nostalgic clickety-clack sound of the train.
The rail line that we operate our scenic trains over is 18.5 miles long. This is a real scenic line. We run along the river, we run through some state forests. There's a lot of wildlife that our passengers can see during the trip. We also give a glimpse of the industrial heritage of the area. We go past some wonderful brick factory mills that are still standing so people can see one of the reasons that the railroad was here, to bring things into the mills and take finished goods out. Over the years, the industry has faded away. It's moved to other places, and we're here to preserve that industrial heritage.
Passengers can walk right up to the front of the train and watch the crew operate the locomotive.
The engine crew runs it. The engineer, the fireman who shovels the coal and makes sure there's enough water in the locomotive.
On the ride, you hear the engine breathing as it travels along the wild and scenic Naugatuck River. We cross over the river 3 times, and unlike a view from the highway, there are no obstructions between you and the beauty of the river.
We see a lot of wildlife along the way, deer, wild turkeys, egrets. There's an egret that likes to pace the train along the river.
Until the 1960s, dozens of freight cars moved over the Naugatuck every day, carrying industrial and consumer products in and out of the valley. And 6 passenger trains per day connected the region to New York City and the rest of America.
If you have 2 guys that can work together and are smooth and easygoing, you will not burn as much coal and water. It's all about doing everything nice and steady. If the wheels are 40 inches in diameter, in theory, the thing should go 40 miles an hour pretty easily. This tank engine's got 38-inch wheels. If it gets over about 15, 20 miles an hour, it gets to be a pretty wild ride. It has roughly 1/5 of the tractive effort of what a modern locomotive has, so it would take at least 4 or 5 of these to equal a diesel. We're pulling 3 heavyweight cars here, and it's not having any trouble whatsoever. It isn't very big, but it has an awful lot of power, and it has a lot of speed and acceleration. Something that big that weighs 40 tons, it will get right up and go if you want it to.
It's an alive machine. It makes sounds, it breathes, it's got that wonderful steam whistle that echoes through the hills.
The Railroad Museum works hard to return the locomotives and cars to their original condition that they were in at the height of the American Railroad era. The original Naugatuck Railroad was chartered in Connecticut in 1845 to be built along the Naugatuck and Housatonic rivers between Winsted and Bridgeport. Construction began 3 years later in 1848 and was completed by May 1849, with the first regular train operating on June 11th. In 1887, the Naugatuck was leased to the New York, New Haven, and Hartford Railroad, better known as the New Haven, and was fully merged by 1906. Today, our restoration shop is a beehive of activity. Roof and interior wood repairs to 80-year-old coaches, cabooses, and freight cars are ongoing, along with federally mandated inspections, repairs, and upgrades to keep the locomotives and other equipment running on our busy summer, fall, and holiday schedules.
Someone once said, you guys have a couple of lifetimes of work ahead of you.
This car is receiving a full frame-up restoration. Exterior steel work, interior woodwork. It's taken about 2 years to restore and will probably be here for about 1 more year before it is fully done. Tony is putting polyurethane on this woodwork, which is going to be going on the roof of this coach. And once this job is done, then this roof should be good for a number of years.
Outside the workshop, this 1920s passenger car waits its turn for restoration.
This car is the Breslin Tower, originally built by the Pullman Company. This car came out of service in the middle part of the last century and is yet unrestored, but you can see how well built this equipment was back then that is still, believe it or not, in incredible condition. All of the fixtures in here are original. This car would be a beautiful museum piece, and we do intend to restore it such that we can display it to the public and show the history of how passenger train travel was in America through much of the last century.
By 1958, passenger train service was discontinued, and as New England's industrial base declined in the 1960s, the New Haven became part of the ill-fated Penn Central. During this period of decline, the rail line lost customers and fell into disrepair. In 1976, the state of Connecticut purchased the line and leased it to Conrail, then to Boston and Maine, and eventually to Guilford Rail System. After regular freight service was finally discontinued in 1995, the very future of the old NAUG line was in doubt. The Railroad Museum of New England's Naugatuck Railroad took over in 1995 and began operating its first trains in 1996. With this, the historic rail line's future was preserved, and in fact, guaranteed.
Okay, 2019, come south to clear the switch and then stop.
Boarding our restored 1920s coaches, we depart Thomaston Station and head south behind one of our vintage diesel locomotives. We cross over the Naugatuck River 3 times. We also ride through huge passageways blasted from solid rock. Named for the town, the Thomaston Dam was built after the devastating floods of 1955. And our railroad is the only one in the United States to run across the face of a dam. The line also takes us through scenic state forests on the final 10-mile leg of our trip to Torrington.
The railroad and the station have been used in a number of movie shoots, TV commercials, a lot of photography shoots. The station behind me was used in Revolutionary Road, where Leo DiCaprio had to get onto a commuter train in August 1955 up in Connecticut and go to Grand Central. There were 150 costumed extras on the platform. It looked like a time machine, and you were right back in 1955 that day. The museum has about 80 pieces of rolling stock, locomotives, cars, and we have smaller artifacts as well. We generally have 2 to 3 operating diesels at any one time, and we run 4 passenger cars in our regular service. All of the things that would have been used to carry freight and passengers, we have a representative collection of. What sustains this museum is the dedication of our volunteers and the hard work and the effort that they put into this place. The museum has about 400 members. We have about 50 active volunteers. What keeps them coming back is the satisfaction that they get out of making something that didn't exist before.
Our volunteer membership includes a mix of talents ranging from architects, civil engineers, and teachers to heating and electrical contractors and heavy equipment operators, and many other skills. Together with outside contractors, they contribute their talent, dedication, and passion for railroading to work in our restoration shop, restore and staff our train station, maintain our track, operate our trains, and interpret our history for visitors. More than a collection of nuts and bolts, the The museum's concept is to tell the region's story as well as that of our forebears who built the railroad, developed the society, and grew the communities it served. A handful of dedicated, passionate individuals devote their time, talent, and energy to ensure that today's generation and generations for years to come will understand, appreciate, and experience firsthand the engine that helped create America, the railroad.